Yesterday's heavy rain saw up to 90 millimetres fall in certain parts of Hawke's Bay. Joining us now to talk about what we can expect with the recent downpour and for the rest of the winter is NIWA Scientist Chris Brandolino. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
Kia ora, and good day to you. Yeah, it's been a wet period across much of the Hawke's Bay region. Actually, I was looking at some of the Hawke's Bay Regional Council rain gauges, and over the past 24, 30 hours, so a little more than the day, there's been upwards of 200 and 250 millimeters of rain over the interior. So this is going over toward the Ruahine Forest, so well west over the interior portion of Hawke's Bay. That's where the heaviest amounts have been so far.
Wow, that is a lot of water. So, as you will understand, people get pretty triggered about rainfall in a post cyclone Gabrielle Hawke's Bay. How much more rainfall do you think the region can expect in the next 24 to 36 hours?
Yeah, so we've had the really heavy bursts of rain, I think, over the past day. But I think what's going to happen now, we're going to transition to kind of a more prolonged period of rain. So I think rain intensities at times could be pretty impressive, maybe 10, 15 millimeters per hour at times. That's most likely toward the northern part of Hawke's Bay, toward, say, Wairoa and that area, especially about the ranges to the north of Wairoa and over as you get farther north toward Tarafati, Gisborne. But it's more the persistent nature. So we are going to see rain persist today, tomorrow, and maybe even into early Friday. Eventually, things will ease as we get toward Friday. But the heaviest rain is likely to be over the northern and interior portions of Hawke's Bay. So, say north of Napier, north and northwest of Hastings, and also around and north of Wairoa. That's where the heaviest rain. There could be another 100, maybe another 150 millimeters of rain on top of what's already fallen. So we'll have to watch for things like landslips, things like surface flooding, and some of the rivers will get quite high as well, I would imagine. I guess the one saving grace is that unlike previous years when we had a lot of rain and obviously the impacts from that, the ground is quite dry. So while the rain is causing maybe some impacts in terms of flooding and things of that nature, there is a bit of good news, and that is the rainfall is much needed. So it is a welcome sight as long as the flooding doesn't occur or any big impacts such as that.
Completely agree. So, how much more rain can Hawke's Bay handle until we see the levels reached during Cyclone Gabrielle?
Oh well, we're not. You got to remember, Cyclone Gabrielle. That was a completely different beast. So we received upwards of 400 or 500 more millimeters of rain within a couple of days, and that's just unprecedented. Not only that, all of that rain fell on a very wet ground, so there was nowhere for that water to go. So a couple things happened to kind of result in that sort of just absolute epic impact. Nothing like that this go around. The ground is quite dry. The streams have been quite low, though they are no doubt increasing. So that's going to help absorb this rainfall. It's really important that we get the rain too during the winter season, because that is the time of year when we have the groundwater recharge. Where basically, during the warm season and the growing season, a lot of water is taken from the ground, either from Mother Nature or by man, so to speak. And so it's that time of the year when we really want to replenish the water, and we do that through rainfall. And if we don't get adequate rainfall during the winter season, that can set us up for, a situation that's pretty undesirable, because you'd be walking into a period, the warm season, when rainfall becomes reduced historically. So, in summary, the rain is needed. We do have to be mindful of, say, impacts such as maybe some areas of flooding, surface flooding, maybe some landslips, maybe some areas of localized river flooding, but that shouldn't be overly widespread, because the rainfall we're not going to see the same intensities. We're not going to see those really high intensities. And what I mean by intensity is, look, it's one thing to get 25 millimeters of rain. Does it fall in 30 minutes or does it fall in 3 hours? Huge difference. And if you're getting intensities that are much more tolerable or reasonable, such as 10, 5, 15 millimeters in 1 hour, that does reduce the risk of high impact events such as the flooding and widespread slips and things of that nature. So impacts shouldn't be overly widespread, but nonetheless, if your area floods when you get heavy rain, or if you tend to notice the stream in your area or your paddock or your neighborhood tends to run high when there's a lot of rain, those are things to keep in mind. Obviously, if there's anything with emergencies, anything the emergency officials have to say, you want to listen to them, things of that nature.
Fantastic advice again, Chris. So, does this wet weather signal that La Nina has returned to New Zealand?
No, the wet weather does not signal La Nina has returned to New Zealand. La Nina, look, we hear these terms, El Nino, La Nina. What do they mean? Oh my gosh, the world's going to end. Oh, no, no. These are what's called climate drivers. So a climate driver is something we rely on as forecasters to help us know which direction the ship is going. You want to know who's steering the ship, and a climate driver can help articulate that. And we were in El Nino for the past several months. We're coming out of that, and El Nino tends to bring more westerly style winds and more dryness. That did happen. Now, admittedly, it took a while for that to happen, but it did come true. It was late in the summer and through much of autumn where we saw a reduction of rainfall for a good part of the northern and eastern part of the North Island. So El Nino, that's pretty much in the rear view mirror. Now we're looking through the windscreen, and it is La Nina we see coming. But La Nina is not this. It's not this event where, oh, it's arrived. I can see it. It's here. It's not like a southerly change when there's a dramatic drop in temperature and a shift in wind, and you kind of know it's here. That's not it. This is something that happens over many weeks or months. So our expectation is that as we head into the spring, so that would be September, October, and beyond, we'll start to see more, I guess, the odds for more La Nina like conditions or weather events will become more likely. So, as a reminder, what La Nina tends to bring to New Zealand is a increased chance or increased frequency of winds coming from the east and the northeast. And that can bring warmer temperatures, higher humidity, and of course, a much greater chance for rain and even some of those heavy rainfall events. However, it may take a while for these kind of quintessential La Nina impacts to really become more noticeable. Um, we may see a propensity for dryness right through the winter season. In fact, our outlook for May, June, and July, and by the way, we'll be updating our outlook at the end of May. So next week, so the very end of May, look for an update. But as it stands now, the one that we assembled just a few weeks ago, we are expecting rainfall for the 3-month period of May, June, and July to be either normal or below normal. So even though we're seeing this big rain event, our expectation is that that's not going to define the next 3 months. Yes, we'll see rain events. It rains in winter, but our expectation is that it's likely to rain what is typical of the next 3 months or less than typical of the next 3 months. So a wetter than usual 3-month period through to the end of July is pretty darn unlikely. And I know it may be hard to believe given the rain that we're talking about now. In terms of temperature, we've had a pretty chilly May. Temperatures have been much colder than average for many parts of the country. That is very unusual. We haven't seen unusually cold temperatures to this extent in quite some time, several years. However, in spite of the unusually chilly temperatures we've seen so far this month in May, our expectation is that that will be, well, pretty darn unlikely for that to persist throughout June, July, and beyond. So yes, there'll be cold snaps. That's what happens in winter. And yes, we'll find chilly temperatures. But in terms of being unusually cold as we go forward for July and June, that looks pretty darn unlikely. Our expectation is that we may see temperatures kind of moderate as a whole as we work our way toward June and July. So yes, it's been chilly, but perhaps we won't see it so unusually chilly as we move forward.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much for talking
Lot
to
to
us this
unpack
morning,
there, I
Chris.
know.
No, it's brilliant. It's good news. I wasn't looking forward to a damp winter, so a dry, kind of warmer than it has been in May winter sounds good to me.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, our official winter outlook, that'll be at the end of May, and that'll really encapsulate the 3-month period, which we define as winter, which is June, July, and August. And we'll have a much better idea of what winter could hold in about a week or so when we kind of pour through the information and assemble our outlook. So yeah, just put a bow around that comment about that question about La Nina. Um, I think it's important to know that when La Nina develops, it's most likely it will. There's about a guess, a 3 and 4 chance, 2 and 3 chance we'll see La Nina by springtime or during the spring season. Just because we have a La Nina doesn't mean we're going to find what we saw a couple years ago with the very heavy rain, the extreme rainfall, the extreme flooding. We got to remember there were 3 consecutive years of La Nina, and that kind of 3 consecutive year, that aggregate, that collective effect, that really put us in the position to see these unusual outcomes of the very wet conditions we saw in 2022 into early 2023. So I just want to kind of put I don't want to. I guess I don't want to make people get overly concerned, and people can be kind of triggered by hearing maybe La Nina, and they associate that what happened 18 months ago, a year ago, sort of thing. It's not a guarantee that those outcomes will happen. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye on things, and how things progress. But yeah, that's the. Hopefully that puts people's minds at ease. But for now, we are dealing with the rain, and hopefully we'll see the end of the rain by Friday into Saturday, and probably some pretty chilly temperatures. And I should mention this, you haven't asked the question, but there'll be some big waves for those who like to surf in the winter. I think next week there'll be some really big waves coming from the southwest that'll be impacting the east of the South Island. So maybe some people who are keen winter surfers could take advantage of that.
Fantastic, Chris. I'm sure you'll send the crowds out to Tiawonga Point. Thank you very much for talking to us today, Chris, and sharing your wealth of weather knowledge. It's very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure being on.